Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Pilates Goddess podcast. It's Lynda Lippin, your host, and today we are having a fabulous interview with my good friend, Bessi Graham. Now, Bessi and I met when we were both members of the same women's networking group, and we happened to be in the same pod. And we had our little pod meetings around this time, actually, maybe a little bit later, early morning in Australia, later evening here. And that really worked well. And at the time, Bessi was deeply involved in running a company that helped, and we're going to talk about this a lot during this podcast, but that really helped business owners and nonprofits specifically figure out how to do good in the world while still making some money and holding some money and doing things with, that money as well. This is her specialty. Bessi is an award-winning entrepreneur. She has over 20 years of experience working with business owners, governments, and large funding bodies to bring doing good and making money back together. We don't all the people making money don't have to be assholes. That's what this comes down to. From the grassroots of sitting in the dirt, working with business owners in the Pacific Islands to the UN headquarters in Geneva, Bessi has seen it all. Working with those who have made it but haven't found fulfillment, Bessi helps business leaders to put their time, talent, and treasure to work in ways that align with their values. And Bessi is also writing a book right now that is it finalized? Profit, Purpose, and Power?
Working title. Okay. Yeah.
Working title, Profit, Purpose, and Power. Really to help change the way businesses are run by just being able on a more global, larger scale to show business leaders how they can create a win-win, find freedom and fulfillment, and also have a positive impact in the world, which is, what Pilates teachers are all trying to do out there, as well as everybody else. So welcome, Bessi.
Thank you so much. Quite the intro.
Isn't it fun hearing your bio read by somebody else? Because you kind of look,
she sounds really smart.
Right. And then you're like, oh, they're talking about me.
Exactly.
Fascinating. So we are currently recording on November 30th here, but it is December 1st.
Just
Bessi
a touch ahead in the future.
Yes, which I always, I find time just to be an interesting concept anyway. I've always been interested in time, and time travel novels were always kind of like a thing for me. And actually, one of my friends and neighbors just wrote a young adult time travel.
Oh, there you go.
Novel, which I think will be interesting because Questlove doesn't do enough. There's not enough. So yes, now moving into young adult fiction.
There you go.
Now, so Bessi, you ran your company for how long?
So I've had a few different companies, and two in particular had that common theme or umbrella that you spoke about of doing good and making money. And so the first was called the Difference Incubator, TDI, and then Benefit Capital was the second that came out of that. But both were very much in that space that you described in the introduction, in terms of working with organizations that wanted to contribute, that wanted to be actually having a positive impact in the world, and helping them figure out how could they do that in a way that actually had a sustainable business model, where there was enough money coming in to keep that mission or purpose going. Because as you said, There'll be many Pilates instructors and teachers who would know this well. Just having the passion and commitment to a cause or something that's important to you can end up being incredibly exhausting and lead to burnout and major financial strain if you can't figure out what is the financial business model that underpins the good you're trying to do in the world. So both the Difference Incubator and Benefit Capital were in that space, one from the capacity building and capability development to help the organisations really, and that was more startup through to small and medium-sized enterprises, build that business model out. And then Benefit Capital came in at that level of more established, sustainable and investable organisations seeking to structure a deal that allowed them to bring in investment and grow and scale that impact.
Yeah, first of all, I always find it interesting that a lot of people forget sometimes that service businesses are for-profit businesses.
Yeah.
Right? They just do. They're like, oh, you're doing service good things for the world. So, oh, you actually wanted to make money at the same time. What is that?
You were thinking you could earn a living?
Right.
Yeah.
On the other hand, people also don't realize that nonprofit businesses still bring in money. And there's still, money that's needed to sort of run the business and do good in the world. And in the Pilates world, we really only have, I think, one nonprofit here, which is the Pilates Method Alliance. And other than that, everybody is trying to make some money and some profit in what they're doing. However, what we see in the Pilates world is a kind of hoarding of information, right? So there's a few of us in the world who have been teaching for, say, more than 30 years or more than 40 years, right? And a lot of us have old photos of Joseph Pilates, exercising. We have photos of our teachers and mentors that were working with Joseph Pilates. We have books of photos, but what's happening now is that really the people who own the Pilates estate have decided that they own all of the historical things that go along with the estate. And, these are the same folks who had the trademark, who bought the trademark in the estate. I'm pretty sure it's got to be the same over there. Like, your trademark courts don't like taking away trademarks.
Yeah,
especially if they're trademarks that have been held for, decades. But this ended up, in federal circuit court here in Manhattan, and they were just like, okay, no more trademark. Now Pilates is generic. And it's beautiful in a way, because that means we can all teach what we want and how we want and not be kind of strictly, held and constrained. But the issue, I think, for a lot of Pilates teachers and a lot of Pilates studios now is defining themselves, is figuring out how to serve clients and do good and still make enough money to survive. Because if we're not making enough money to survive, we can't serve our clients.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to really understand. And that, I think, comes back to almost you make the aspect of the legal structure, whether it's a non-profit or a for-profit, that's kind of irrelevant, because what we need to focus on is those components of what are we trying to do in the world? Who are we serving? What do we need to be able to be confident we can keep delivering, whether that's a product or, in this case, a service? And to do that, the reality is we need more money coming in than going out. And that's not about legal structure or whether you're a greedy person or none of those factors are part of that. So our base level relationship with money needs to shift and change when we have these conversations, because it's, as you said, it's a foundational component that needs to be in every single one of our minds as we go out there in the world and do our thing.
So how? I guess how is the big question, right? Because you're trying to do good in the world. There's plenty of people who need the work and, need what we do, who do not have a lot of money, right? But frankly, there's plenty of people who need our work who have plenty of money.
Yeah, and who potentially would pay a lot more than we're charging.
Yes. So how do we make that leap from, we want to really serve the underrepresented to it's okay to take some money from the man. When I worked at Parrot Key, I used to say it all the time. People would be like, I was like, we totally work for the man.
Let's be honest. Yeah.
Let's just be honest. It's an A-list private island. Okay. That's who we're working with. And I was fine with that because I was paid well. I had room and board covered. I had good vacation time. And I got to meet a wide variety of really, really interesting and very smart people, who were government leaders, who were, fashion designers and philanthropists and, all kinds of individuals. And I never kind of questioned that because I was like, everybody needs this work. And if these folks are feeling and functioning better, they're going to be doing better things in their own work out there in the world of whatever they're doing. And if I'm getting paid really well, then that means that if I want to then go and teach some people who don't have a lot of money or do some free classes or whatever that looks like, I can do that.
Yeah. There's so many layers to what you've just kind of talked about that I'm trying to decide where to start because firstly, related to the clientele that you were just speaking about, the reality is every human is important, right? So if you're helping someone who is the leader of a country or an amazing artist and they're paying very well, that piece is almost irrelevant. Them having a body that is functioning well and that is free of pain and that allows them to get on with their life, that is valuable in and of itself, regardless of who that person is. So the status of the person doesn't make them more or less worthy of your time and work. But the aspects too are really just so important too. I think there's kind of two components of pulling apart and coming to your initial question of, well, how on earth do you do this? So how do you actually get to that place where you have the better relationship with money? And I think the first is a personal one. So it is about actually sitting with and maybe digging around a little bit with the components of what am I uncomfortable about? Like, where is there a line that actually this is more my issue than my customer's issue or this sector or any of that? It's actually about me. It's that I feel uncomfortable asking for more than this amount of money. That feels fair and reasonable. Beyond that, I feel like I'm being unreasonable. So there's a personal aspect to thinking about and working on your own discomfort or relationship with money. But there's then also, and I know, Lynda, that this is something that you are much more involved in than others in the Pilates space, there's also just realities about learning to run the business well. Because that's actually critical. It's not just a personal transaction between you and an individual customer. There are layers to what has to be in place for your business to work. And even if it is something that is quite small scale and you see it as a passion, the reality is there's structural elements to any business. And so part of what we need to also think about, and I find with people, it does help them become a little bit more comfortable if there's that bit of separation. Oh, it's not me asking. This isn't like an hourly rate for me as an individual. This is the business I'm running. There's costs to that. So people kind of understand that if you can separate it out and start to almost, it's that productizing, turning what your service into a product gives you that little bit of distance that someone's not paying you a certain dollar amount for an hour of your time, but they're buying, 10 sessions of this type of workout or whatever it is. So I think that there's these components that can help separate from the discomfort of you as an individual asking for money by framing it, even if it's only you. Say we and refer to your business name or just that distinction can help you feel more comfortable with the money aspect. And then working into that, the realities of figure out who that customer is or customers, if there's multiple levels, and focus more on them and what they need, because that will help you from a pricing perspective get that distinction right between, there's some people who actually, if you make it a more VIP exclusive experience, they'll pay you 5 times more than someone. The class is the same, but all you had to do was add some nice towels available for them to use at the beginning and give them a drink at the end and make it a class that's only got a smaller number of people and has more direct contact with you. And they'll suddenly pay a fortune for that because they want that experience. And then you can run the exact same class, but with more people and take out some of the extras and run that at a different price point. That makes a business work because we've thought about the customer, what we have of value to them, and we've stopped making it this hourly rate but as long as I've made $40, then that's okay. The rest is kind of irrelevant. Don't do that. Think about the customer, shape the experience and the value around what they're looking for, and price it accordingly. And those pieces, and, to the extent that you want to, Lynda, we can drill into the realities of the business model side. But I do think that starts to help with some of the discomfort that I often find people in this situation of a service-based business in a smaller end of the scale. It can really help to think about it like that.
I agree. In my experience, when I owned studios, I always tried to open in areas of wealth. Like that was my thing. I wanted to open where people could afford it and where people needed it.
Can you say that bit again? My headphones died, so I took them out and then it wasn't coming through the speaker.
It happens.
Apologies.
It happens. I think that people tend to not always focus on who their clients are and the amount of cash flow that they need. And so when I opened my studios, I always tried to open in places where there was higher net worth, higher income, and you can look at maps of the US or wherever you live, and you can kind of see where the pockets of money are, and there are pockets of money everywhere. Like I don't care where you live. You can live in an extremely poor area. There are some folks there that have some money. And then I would work on what those folks needed, right? So I had a lot of, retired, snowbirds in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and a lot of them golfed. So working with golfers became a big thing. A lot of them had osteoporosis. So, working with that became a big thing. Some were going through breast cancer treatment or prostate cancer treatment. And, so we worked on that. And that then allowed us as a studio to be able to grow, number one, because we had this kind of wealthy clientele who could support, what we needed. Then I started doing teacher training, right, with the Physical Mind Institute, which was awesome because then that gave me the ability to have apprentices and have trainees and be able to actually give away some free Pilates, some low cost Pilates. And I mean, it was harder then. This was like pre-internet. This was, printing up the flyers of we have trainees, come get your $15 Pilates session.
Yeah.
Because they need their hours, but it then allowed us to kind of serve the whole community.
Exactly. And it does two things. So it helps differentiate you because people then see. So the examples you gave, if I have been skiing for years and I have certain injuries and I have the confidence that you can identify those, you know how to work on them and you've got results in that area. Or I play golf and I know that you can target those bits. And as soon as I walk in, you say, oh, is that, do you swing like this? And is your hip doing, you give me confidence. The fact that you're now very much differentiated from just any generic Pilates studio means that person, from a stickiness of the customer, they're not just comparing you to every other option that might be $10 cheaper. They're saying,
right,
no, I want you, right? So there's a beautiful piece of the win that it creates for you in that space. But it also, as you said, it's this aspect of when we think of service-based businesses and go right back to that idea of how do you do good and make money in the same business, the reality is that the bulk of the good that you do as someone who's running a studio or running classes or whatever the size and scale of your work is, the reality is the bulk of the good is related to your customers and those students, those people that you're working with, and the changes you can create in their life. So the more you show them and honor the fact that they're worth you drilling into and understanding the injuries or the tendencies in their own bodies and being specialized in able to address those things, the more positive impact you have with them. And that's when it creates this beautiful reinforcing cycle that is good for your business, because then they are going to go and tell other people about you and bring new customers. They are going to continue to come to you for years because they wouldn't go anywhere else. And so you have recurring revenue and a confidence to be able to predict and map out your own cash flow and money in your system. But it's not just a sense of, great, now I'm running a good business and I don't have to worry about cash flow. You also have that beautiful aspect of the fulfillment that comes from knowing the impact you're having in those people's lives. So I think it's important in both of those examples you gave there to remind ourselves that not only is thinking like that good for business, it allows you to be more impactful and contribute in a positive way in the world. So that is you doing good inside your business rather than externalizing it and saying, oh gosh, I'll give a donation here and there to other causes as I can, but I'm not really making very much money. So how could I really make an impact or do good in the world? I'm not wealthy. It's like, no, bring it all back internal into the business and see that the good you're doing is with those customers you're serving.
Right. And, I'm remembering that another thing that I used to do a lot of was gift bags, charity events, like all the major charity events. I had clients who, ran nonprofits, who founded nonprofits, and they would, invite me to their events. They would allow me to put gift certificates in the gift bags, introduce me to all of those folks. And yeah, I would give, sizable gift certificates in those gift bags. But the people that we would then get from those gift certificates turned into those same clients who came back and came back and came back and kept sending their friends in. And, and again, everybody was kind of feeling better and doing better and wanted to really continue, that trend. And that, that gave me kind of that ability to be very much involved in local charity events and kind of get the word out there and get my business's name out there, while not necessarily drastically impacting my bottom line.
Mm. And the thing that's important, I think, to highlight in what you've spoken about is there was intention and forethought in what you did, in who you were giving those significant vouchers to, in who you were putting those into the gift bags at events, etc. Because one of the things that we can do if we stay in a place of being reactive instead of there being this reflection and thoughtfulness to our work is when we have the urge to, oh, I want to contribute or I want to give back, I'm feeling like I haven't done anything. And so then we randomly latch on to an issue or a topic and give to that particular topic. But it's not coming from a place of deeply knowing and understanding what we bring most to the world and the types of people that we serve and how to interact with them. So I think this comes back to that importance of realizing that even in something like a service-based business, understanding at least at a basic level some of those business components of saying, oh, if I'm going to give some vouchers or donate some of my time or run classes, do I understand who some of those potential channels or organizations that are directly going to connect me to ideal customers are? How do I then partner with them? How do I look for organizations where I believe in their particular cause? So it might be that you say, I have a real passion for making sure women are in a position to leave situations of domestic violence. So actually I'm going to partner with a moving company that I know donates, once a month, they help a woman move out for free, and they've got this big event coming up and they are working in areas where there are people wanting to do Pilates. Okay, I will donate my vouchers to that organization. So make a connection, because I think one of the pieces when we don't have the thoughtful aspects of knowing and understanding ourselves and our own business, and then we don't do that thinking about, okay, well, how do I now understand my customers and the reality of running the business? Then we tend to just externalize the good, make a donation or a contribution and hope that that does enough to make us feel like, okay, I've contributed, this feels fulfilling, but then you go back to stressing about your business. So connect the dots is what I'm saying.
Yes. And I think it's, it's also a matter of really positioning and being okay with that positioning. And like you said, that can be a lot easier when you separate kind of your business from yourself and just pretend like, it's the business. That's
which again, let's remind people, you can do that even if you're the only person. Yeah. There is a level of bluff, right? So you're not being dishonest, but it just gives that little bit of separation where you're saying the business name instead of your personal name, where you're saying we instead of I. Those little changes can help shift that. So it's worth doing.
Definitely. And once you start doing that, those opportunities continue to come. So I think a lot of it is feeling, even if you don't feel totally confident, is saying yes to that first opportunity. Like I remember being invited to, a major charity event at like Boyd's and, the top, store in Philly. And then being invited to a tea, which was the major fundraiser. And going to that tea, my client actually, who started that nonprofit, she brought me to her house because she's like, I know that you don't have a hat. That's the kind of hat that you want to wear to this. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to make you go out and buy that hat, because you're probably never going to wear it except to this. So come over to my house And we're going to go through my hats, and you're going to bring what you're wearing so we can match the hat. And I did. And I had a beautiful hat on for this, spring tea fundraiser event. Was it totally in my comfort zone? Absolutely not.
But what it was connected to your understanding of one of your very critical customer segments, which again goes back to the fact that you, Lynda, knew that in advance. So it wasn't a random piece, because the little part in my mind that alarm bells go off is, you're right. When we start to do these things, more opportunities will come. You need to be able to know and to have some clarity that allows you to discern if something's a good opportunity or a distraction and a waste of your time. Because the old saying of strategy is saying no to good things. There'll be lots of good opportunities. And the more you raise that profile, the more you are confidently presenting what you do, more opportunities will come. But you need to be able to very quickly discern, oh, I know the channels to my customers, and I know my customers, and I know what needs to be in that back end of my business to make this work and for this to be a good opportunity. And so when someone offers something, I don't need to go away and take 2 weeks to figure out if it's good or bad. I can, in the conversation, say, yes, let's chat about that. I'll give you my number. Or you can politely say, that sounds really lovely. We're committed out till the end of the financial year, or, we've done our X component of pro bono work. I found that very helpful in the early days of consulting work.
That's a good phrase. I like that.
So when I was consulting, and there's always so many people who are asking you to do work for free. And so I did a lot, and I still do a lot of work pro bono, and I'm happy to do that. But there comes a point when you're taking up so much of your week doing that you don't actually have time for the paid work. And so to save my discomfort when I was younger, when I got to the point where I was doing enough that I was comfortable and I knew any more and I would be stretched, I would say to people, I love what you're doing. It sounds like a great project. I'm already at capacity with my pro bono allocation at the moment. But if I knew someone else I would recommend, or if I genuinely wanted to work with them but just couldn't now, I would give them a few suggestions of, like, maybe work on these 3 things. And if you still need help in 12 months, I'd love to talk to you again, right? So just prepare some of those things that allow you to not in the moment feel uncomfortable and commit to something that you can't actually do.
Right. Or something that you discover
or that
you don't want to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what happens too. And then you blow it off, or you don't do it well. And then everyone's annoyed, and it just doesn't really work well.
I think it was Brene Brown who said, when it comes to those boundaries, that your choice is to either set the boundary and have a potentially uncomfortable conversation in the moment, or to choose resentment because you don't have the difficult conversation. You say yes, but you actually didn't want to do that. You don't have time, or you're not interested. And now this kind of resentment starts to boil up in you, but you had a choice there.
Right. And then that's actually what I found a lot in the Pilates world. There's a lot of resentment. There's a lot of teachers who resent their clients because they're not charging enough, so they're not making enough money. There's teachers who resent the people they work for because they don't feel like they're being paid enough money. And there's a lot of resentment that goes on. I mean, and I understand it. Like, I'm sorry, here in Manhattan, generally teachers are making, $30 an hour, which is basically what they were making 25 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's 2 bits that's interesting. So that, on the one hand, that means that the connections in terms of that experience for Pilates teachers is actually very similar to a lot of people in the nonprofit space, where they have very wealthy philanthropic funders, and yet they're trying to, in the nonprofit space, the CEO is being paid terribly, the staff are not paid well, they're expected to give their blood, sweat and tears and, do this amazing work. But there's this pressure from funders saying, well, this is about that cause and what percentage of the money is going to the operations and administration costs. And you think, hang on, it's all right for you to earn hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but these people aren't allowed. Like, there's this disconnect which creates that resentment and a really bad, unhealthy power dynamic, which is what you're talking about in that Pilates space. Mm-hmm. There's also a gendered aspect, because that aspect of us falling into traps of martyrdom and not saying no, or not claiming what it is we need or want, but just going along with and feeling like we're in a society where so much of the unpaid, caring type work has been done by women and not compensated, that there's kind of these deeply rooted patterns there that are hard to break. But part of this journey and part of doing the bringing good and the doing good and making money back together, and going on your own journey to think about and start to value the positive impact you are creating in the world just by showing up and doing your work, that itself will start to change the way you speak about your work, the flipping that piece that it's not actually about me saying, please buy this from me and it costs this much, but it's about saying, I see what you're struggling with and I have a solution for it. Let me help you. This is the ways I can improve your life or reduce the pain that is currently in your body and preventing you from having the life you want. So that shifting to the good you're doing, the focus on the customer, but not in a way that makes you resent them, in a way that adds such value that you can charge appropriately for it, and now start to have a healthier power dynamic and a much healthier business in the process.
Yes. And when you have that healthy power dynamic and a healthier business, then you're just going to be a healthier, happier human.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yourself. And you know what? Of all the people out there in terms of service businesses, don't you want that from your Pilates instructor? Like, you want the teacher you want to come in and for their energy to be flowing well and for them to just be emanating that they are in a good place. You don't want to learn Pilates from someone who looks tense and angry and, that their whole body is tight and trapped and locked up. So you guys, more than anyone, want to be in a really good place yourself, in your body and your mind. That will actually also make you far more appealing to your students.
Right. And I think it's, really important for Pilates teachers to stop just saying, I don't think Pilates should ever cost more than this, or I don't think people should ever pay more than this for a Pilates session. I was talking to somebody a few weeks ago and she said to me, I can't believe what you charge for a private Pilates session. And I said, well, I know that, but my expertise is there and people do better and that's what they're paying for. But I'm like, you can also go on to, Hello Revel 3 days a week and you can take 30-minute classes with me for $5. Right? Yeah. Because there's a whole slew of folks there who really cannot afford it. But, but I get, 10 to 12 people in a class. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's half an hour. They're all doing well. They're spreading the word. And some of those folks have actually made the leap and come into my space because they wanted better scheduling and longer sessions and private work and whatever.
That's about you not deciding in advance for the customer that they can't afford you or that they don't want to pay that. Right. Because we all know that there are times in our life where actually, even if you're very strapped for cash, you would rather go to someone where you're going to get results in that hour, and it saves you having to spend 3 hours doing classes that were a waste of your time, actually hurt you more. You didn't know, where to start, or that you were trapped. When we think about some of the issues that you're helping people with, they're otherwise paying a fortune to go and see a physiotherapist and then to go and get a scan and then to go, the costs add up. And what we're doing is being clear on how we can help and our expertise, and then communicating to someone, instead of spending 9 months and potentially X amount of thousands of dollars going to 4 different people trying to solve this, how about you try this for X amount of time? And my results would show that you're not even going to need to go and see those other people, right? So you're actually saving them money.
Exactly. And time. It's just like, I mean, I think, I shared this in the pod a lot, but when we first moved online, when everyone had to move online, I've been teaching online for like forever. Partly because I lived on, the tiny private island. So if I wanted to see anybody else, it was going to be online. And then I was teaching Pilates teachers all over the place online prior to COVID. But once that hit, it was very interesting because you had all of these teachers who had basically told all of their clients that they had to be on the Pilates equipment, that the Pilates equipment was so much more effective than the mat, that it was so much better. Because of course, if you just laid out 5 figures for, a bunch of Pilates equipment, you want it to make some money before it all depreciates. And then all of a sudden they had to like convince their clients that mat was fine.
And to keep paying them, but just do it on a mat at home.
Right. Now, my thing was more like here's the bands and tubing with the door anchors and wall anchors that you can order from Amazon. And we can mimic some of that spring work. And here's, the small things that you can buy. Yeah. I had one of my teacher clients was, instead of teaching, like the long box work on the reformer with pulling the arms, she had people getting on their ottomans on their stomachs.
Oh, perfect.
With hand weights and doing it there. I mean, there's, if you can be so creative, and my clients appreciate saving the half an hour to an hour of travel time. Yeah. They're not worrying about the subway being late, getting stuck in traffic in the Uber, the whatever. They just open up their, the worst thing is they have to reboot their modem.
Yeah.
Or the Zoom updates, randomly at the beginning of the session, or, what that is. But other than that, it's much more convenient.
It's interesting because as you bring up that aspect around time, it takes my mind back to the beginning of this conversation where you were speaking about some of the challenges in the Pilates space at the moment, and those with that now own trademarks and assets, and the challenges that the broader community of teachers are having. And I think if we come back to a really old concept, which I love, which is around the ideas of thinking about our use of our time, talent, and treasure, we suddenly realize that even if we're limited on the treasure side, so even if we don't currently have a lot of money to be able to feel comfortable or invest or make other contributions, looking at the aspects of the specifics of your talent, so how you can use that in different ways and how you're using your time, those pieces are actually help you feel more conscious of you have assets or capital more broadly, because those things aren't just limited to money or physical things that we have. And so I think that can be a really nice place for Pilates teachers and instructors to come back to as well, to kind of say, okay, if I'm at a place where I'm feeling either close to burnout, or I'm feeling unsatisfied, or I'm feeling that I'm working really hard, but I'm not seeing the results of that mean that in my own life I'm more comfortable or able to have the lifestyle I would like to have, that I see all my clients having, then starting to be more reflective on your use of your time, your talent, and your treasure can be a good place to start. Because if we combine that with then some of the other pieces we've talked about today related to really knowing and understanding your different customer segments and how the business itself works and what's important to you or where your blockages are, those things together just allow you to be far more conscious and intentional in the way you then show up and in your choices about how you run a class or who you offer it to or the price point. So I think it's worth just having a few of those things in your toolbox, that when you're feeling a bit out of whack and things aren't working, that you can say, okay, what of the tools that I have could I just sit with and reflect for 30 minutes and start to see how could that get me out of this funk?
Right. And, and also realizing, I think, where to kind of put our energy. Joan Breitbart from the Physical Mind Institute did a podcast episode recently about this intellectual property issue with the historical photos of Joe Pilates. And she's like, look, I got a ton of this stuff. She's like, I'm sitting in my office looking at the photo. I've seen the photo. I've been in her office many times, and of, Joe being honored at this like main event. She's like, but guess what? I don't need to post it on social media. I got the photo. I can look at the photo anytime I want. I can take a photo of the photo and send it to you. I can do all kinds of things with the photo, but I don't need to share it on social media. I really don't. And she just made that decision for herself that this is not important.
And it's the pick your battles. Is that something you want to give your energy to?
Exactly. And, I kind of decided that it wasn't really something I wanted to give a lot of energy to. I think it will be nice to have just a court decision that says, this is general use intellectual property, or the estate owns it and he owns the estate, which could be the decision. I mean, there have been decisions made like that, right? Where ownership does give you license and kind of trademark, copyright ownership of those things. I don't know, because I'm not a lawyer and I don't do that work. So I've just decided not to worry about it, not post that stuff. Go about my business. Because
and a little bit like the fights around champagne, or like, is something champagne if it's not from champagne, or is it sparkling wine, or what again, those same arguments have been. And in a casual social setting, people still are calling it champagne when it's not from champagne. The same will happen with Pilates or anything, regardless of what a formal decision is. But I think that when you are working in that industry, so if we were making a sparkling wine, do we want to spend our time fighting that we want to have the word champagne on our bottle, or do we stop fighting that and just build this incredible wine that people want to buy and a brand that they love, and don't spend your energy fighting that bit? Because, to be honest, then all that does is keep you in the general pool anyway, with everyone selling champagne or everyone being a Pilates teacher. You still have to figure out what differentiates you as an instructor. What are your specialty areas of passion or skill that you've been working in? And how do you speak to your customers or clients in a way where they go, actually, regardless of the use of that word or not, I want to work with Lynda.
Right. And I think people also have to realize that champagne, I think, is a really good example, because you have so many levels of champagne, right? And let's not even get into the cava and the prosecco and the sparkling wine and all of that. But even if you just look at champagne, like actual champagne from the champagne, champagne, you have so many different champagnes, so many different levels of champagne. And quite frankly, really, I have had the several $100 bottles of champagne. We used to, a lot of our celebrity, like homeowners and stuff, that was like, if they would be repping a champagne brand or whatever. And so for every, that Christmas, you knew what you were going to get for your holiday gift was going to be some, whatever they had. And, really at the end of the day, I like the Yellow Label Veuve.
Here's the thing though, Lynda, and this comes back to what we were talking about before related to knowing a customer, because I'm the same. I can't tell the difference. If you give me a really expensive, I either like it or I don't, but it doesn't make a difference if it was $6 or $600.
Right.
I still may not like it, even if it was $600. I'm not the person who you are aiming for if it's about that. But the piece that we don't want to do is project that we don't care about it, or we think a Pilates class is only worth X amount, and then assume that that's the case for everybody, because there are people who are obsessed with a particular bottle of champagne, or who will pay for an amazing Pilates class that you might think, gosh, it was good. I might have given you $50, but I wouldn't have given you $300. Whereas that person's going, oh my goodness, like every time I'm there, I will give you $300 without blinking. Right? It's this piece of, while we might have our own preferences, again, remove yourself from it and focus on those individual customer segments, really making sure you understand both the gains, the positive things they're looking for that they're willing to pay for, and the pain points, those negative aspects that they want someone to relieve for them, that they're willing to pay for. Understand that, and then frame your offering and price your offering around respecting that client, rather than it making it about your own preferences or comfort levels with different price points.
Yes. I'm repeating that for you guys because that's an important one. Your pricing is not about your comfort level with what you're willing to spend on things, okay?
No, you're not the customer.
Your pricing in your business is not for you as a customer.
Mm-hmm.
It's for your customers who are not you.
Yeah. And so press that little button that says 30 seconds back. Press 30 seconds back and listen to that again.
Exactly, because it's important. Well, Bessi, thank you so much.
My pleasure. I really hope that it's helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, these are a lot of, Pilates certification programs really don't teach anything about the business and finance and customer angles. There's a few of us in the Pilates space who do offer that support. I think there's about 5 of us or 6 of us. Every single one went outside of the Pilates world, like I did, to get that, piece of the puzzle, and then kind of brought it back in.
Well, but it's beautiful that those of you that are doing that are sharing that back in, because it is so important.
Yeah. I mean, without that, how people are worried about like sharing historical photos. If we don't all get our shit together in terms of running a good business, they say like Pilates is like the fastest growing thing in the world right now, but it's Club Pilates, it's the chains, it's the franchises that are doing 12-person reformer classes and doing that. Those are the ones that are expanding and doing really well. And that's not like, my clients aren't going to those studios. Okay. My clients don't want that. And I think that there's room, for all of it. But if we're going to continue really having Pilates and having it on that private, personal level where it really impacts a lot of people and helps us feel and function better, then we really need to be looking at how we're running our businesses.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah. So you guys, Bessi, if people want to get in touch with you, how should they best get in touch with you?
So I have a podcast called Both And with Bessi Graham. So think of, instead of either or, I'm saying you can have both and. So you can listen to the podcast, or come over and follow me on Instagram. You'll find me under Bessi Graham, or just look up bessigraham.com.
Great. And then you also have a Facebook group. I know this.
I do. Yep. So we can share all the links with.
All the links will be in the show notes so that you can very easily.
Yeah. I would love to hear from people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've connected Bessi with some of my clients and some of my friends who, run nonprofits or are just, working on coaching, high net worth individuals and doing good in the world. And she's great. we had a half an hour conversation a few weeks ago, and you sort of put me back on a path in my business to, where I could be talking to my customers in ways that I wasn't or had kind of gotten away from. And it was super helpful.
Exactly. We all need that sounding board, don't we?
We do. So everybody, once again, thanks you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. I appreciate all of you. If you love the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would go to the Apple Podcast app and leave a rating and review. You can also leave a rating on Spotify, which does allow star ratings, but not written reviews. And on Podchaser, where you actually don't have to be a registered user, but can leave star ratings and written reviews of any podcast that you listen to. And again, all of those links will be in the show notes, as well as the links for getting in contact with Bessi, because I think you should. All right. Thank you. And I will see you guys or talk to you guys next time. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.